Industries and businesses thrive when they have the capacity to have a bigger market. And what Africa Continental Free Trade Area does is to bring 1 billion people on the continent of Africa to be customers of businesses that could potentially be here in Kenya. So that's number one. Number two, in attracting investments into Kenya, a lot of companies limit the size of their investments based on the potential that they have. So if companies see 50 million people, they limit based on what that size is. But we want people to operate out of Kenya and be able to access the 1 billion Africans. And our role is to make sure that whilst investors have the choice to be in any of the 54 African countries, that we make it possible for them to choose Kenya. And that is the role we have. But there are some, simple things that we need to fix on the continent of Africa. We have border controls, between different countries. Movements of people, movements of capital between countries is an issue. And so all these are defined within the framework of the free trade agreement, and they are being dealt with step by step. So Kenya, for example, is the first country out of the 54 countries to ratify the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Number two, we have made it possible for every African to be able to visit Kenya without having to apply for Kenyan visa outside. You can get your visa at the port of entry without any problems. The trade finance within the continent is today restricted and inhibited by the amount of trade finance available within the continent, certainly by the commercial banks. The big banks that have been traditionally and historically financing trade on the continent are international banks that tend to be sitting in places like London, Paris, and the US. And those people do not have sufficient understanding, or they are much more risk averse than what we would like to see happen here. Trade finance tend to follow the ease with which people are able to do trade together. And so governments have to move in first, and the commercial banks will follow. As I said, if it's not easy for people to move and do trade, it's a problem. If goods cannot move quickly, it's a problem. If there's not sufficient insurance infrastructure, it's a problem. So all these are things that we are doing. We need to notify our commercial banks. They see it. I think theirs is to follow, and hopefully we will work in tandem.